Finally, after all this time, I can say I finally understand why people like the Lord of the Rings movies. Hey everybody, Ryan Reed here. And yeah, so the Lord of the Rings films, they've always kind of stumped me, I guess, for lack of a better phrasing. There's nothing inherently wrong with them. When the movies came out, I went and saw them. I enjoyed them. I never thought they were bad movies. But I've never really been able to get into the kind of crazy amount of fandom that these movies and this, universe has. But recently, that all changed when I went back and decided to just watch them out of nowhere for absolutely no reason other than me going, I haven't seen the Lord of the Rings movies in a while. As a little backstory, before I saw the movies, I do believe I had read The Hobbit. I read that when I was fairly young, maybe 5th grade, something like that. And I had seen the Rankin and Bass animated film as well, so I was kind of familiar with that story. Lord of the Rings, not so much. And I loved The Hobbit. As a kid, I really did enjoy that book. I was like, man, this is great. It's fantastic. And I saw the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out. I don't remember if I knew they were connected or if I learned they were connected after, or, what the deal was. But I do remember kind of being familiar with The Hobbit and then going in to see Lord of the Rings. And Lord of the Rings, like I said, when I saw it in theaters, I enjoyed them. I saw them all in theaters. I bought them all on DVD. I had them. I owned them. I could sit there and go, those are good movies. But then as the years went on, I just never really rewatched them. Something like Star Wars, I've seen hundreds of times. Obviously, all the horror movies I love, I've seen hundreds of times. Some of the comedies I love. There's a bunch of stuff I've seen over and over again. Lord of the Rings movies, I just was like, yeah, these are good. And then they just sit on the shelf. And I don't know why that is. And my history of Lord of the Rings has continued to kind of be up and down. After I saw Fellowship in the theater, I decided I wanted to read the books, so they just re-released them as one giant, solid book. If you, threw it at a wall, you could do some damage. It was massive and super heavy. And I decided, I want to give this a shot. And as much as I love The Hobbit, I could not get through Fellowship. It was so boring to me. Now, granted, I was in 7th grade, but even then I was like, oh my god, this is so boring. Especially after seeing the movie and enjoying the movie, but I was just like, God, this book will not end. In fact, I was doing a book report on it, and I could not get through the last chunk of the book in time for the book report, so I kind of just based it on the movie, and I even said that in class. I was like, look, I didn't finish the book yet. I'm trying to, but I kind of, had to use deductive reasoning to try and figure out where it's going, and so that all worked out, but besides the point. But yeah, I could not get, so I never read Two Towers. I never read Return of the King, because I didn't like the way Tolkien or Tolkien wrote. The Hobbit was very specific, but the joke I always use is that I'm like, I love learning about Middle Earth, but I don't need to know how many stitches are in Gandalf's hat. I don't need to know every single little detail about everything to paint a picture of this world. And so at that time in my life, reading Fellowship, I was like, I have no desire to finish this book series. I just didn't want it. Now, I did see all the movies. I did enjoy all the movies. And then a few years later on down the road, probably 5, 6 years, something. I don't know. I think I was in my first year of college. The movies came out in 2000, 2001, 2003, I believe. So this would have been 5, 6 years later. I decided to pick up a copy of the extended edition of The Two Towers because I had heard so many good things. I saw that they had this cool set. It was at a Ross, oddly enough. They had the extended version of Two Towers and this cool Gollum statue, and it was $10. And I was like, all right, yeah, let's give this a shot. People talk about how great the extended editions are. And so for some reason, I just went in to watch Two Towers extended. I don't even think I bothered watching Fellowship or anything, because I was like, I know. Those are. I have the regular DVDs. I've seen them a couple times. And I got through disc 1 and it ended. And I was like, great, I'll watch disc 2 tomorrow. And I never did. I still have that copy, and something about, I've always kind of felt more closely to the joke Randall has in Clerks 2. If you've seen Clerks 2, there's this big argument between what's better, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. And Randall basically says, there are 3 movies about people walking. And I'm like, That's kind of how I felt about them. I can sit there and I can marvel at their technical, achievements and how good they are, and they're well made and they're well acted, and, they're this great envisioning of the Middle Earth universe, and so, and if somebody, like, I knew was like, hey, you have Lord of the Rings, let's watch Lord of the Rings, I'd be like, alright, but, like, I almost never went back and, like, popped the DVDs in myself. So, out of nowhere, like, 2 months ago, I was just like, I want to watch Lord of the Rings. And over the course of 4 days, I watched all 3 of them. Now, I did watch... Here's the thing. I wanted to give them the best shot, because I was like, maybe I misjudged them. So I wanted to give them the best shot. So I watched the theatrical cuts for a couple reasons. One, they're the copies I own. Besides that extended cut of Two Towers, I own all the theatrical cuts. 2, Peter Jackson does say they're his preferred cuts of the film. And, it's... I kind of have to go with that, because I want to give the films the best chance that I can. Not the universe, but how these are as a film. And then maybe I will get more invested in the Middle Earth universe and everything. But for now, I'm like, let's watch these as a film. If Peter Jackson says these are the best film versions, I'm going to watch those. Now, a lot of fans disagree. They say the extended cuts are better because they're closer to the books. I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at, as a representation of these stories on film, let me give these films the best shot. Because again, like I said, I liked the movies. I enjoyed them. I've watched them a few times, but like I almost never went back to them and watched them. It's been probably 10 years at this point. So getting to kind of experience them with fresh eyes to some degree. I mean, obviously I kind of know where the story was going, but just like sit down and watch them as the best films, as the best versions that even the director, agrees are the better versions for films, not extended lore, but just the films. I was like, those are the versions I'm going to watch. Now, if Peter Jackson went out and said, the extended cuts are my preferred, they're way better, they're better films, I would probably watch those. But even he agrees that you sacrifice a lot of pacing and storytelling for all that added material. I also did myself a favor and I looked up some of the scenes that got added to the extended cuts, so I was familiar with them. And for me personally, and I'm sure there's a lot of you Lord of the Rings fans out there who would disagree, but for me personally, there's only 1 or 2 things I wish were in the versions I watched from the extended cuts. For me personally, at this moment. So let's jump into it. So obviously I started with Fellowship of the Ring, and as a kid, I always remember this being my least favorite. Not that the film was bad, but I remember there's nothing happening in the first half of the film. I remember it just kind of dragging and being like, okay, we're setting things up. And I remember nothing happening really until they get to the mines of Moria, I believe. And also I might pronounce things wrong. Like, sorry to all you Lord of the Rings fans out there, but like I'm gonna do my best. I'm still not quite sure if it's Aragorn or Aragon, but depending on the act. But so I guess I'll go with Aragorn. Like, you know what? Actually, let me look that up. Okay, I just looked it up. Yes, it is Aragorn with an R at the end. So I guess I'll pronounce Aragorn. Viggo Mortensen. Like, that's, Aragorn. We'll go with that. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but that's what I'll go with. So anyway, getting back on point. I always I thought it was the most boring. And watching it this time, I was really shocked how good the pacing is on Fellowship. Actually, the movie moves along at a pretty good pace, and there's a lot more stuff, a lot more tension, a lot more storytelling, a lot more kind of like driving elements than I remember. Like I said, I remember it being really dull up until the mines, and then it was like action all the way to the end. But no, I mean, they have the scene at the Prancing Pony. Of course, there's the scene where they're trying to escape the ring wraiths, and they're like, that's when they run into Merry and Pippin and everything like that. And like all that stuff, like there's a lot of really well-structured pacing throughout the movie that I was actually really surprised and happy with, that the movie moved along a lot faster than I remember it. I mean, it's still a 3-hour movie, don't get me wrong, and it's still very epic in scale, but watching it now, where I was kind of like, okay, well, when I was preparing, I was like, first hour and a half, just gotta get through that. No, not at all. I really enjoyed it. Fellowship is also the one that actually feels the most like a Peter Jackson movie to me. And what I mean by that is if you watch his early movies, he's got a lot of like crazy, over the top gore and kills and like all this like zaniness to his early movies and a lot of Dutch angles and a lot of like craziness. And Fellowship is the one that kind of felt the most like that. Like the thing that popped into my head where I was like, that is very Peter Jackson. There's a scene where Strider, Aragorn, is fighting all the ring wraiths, and he takes like a torch and just like chucks it at one. It hits him in the face, and he lights on fire, and he's running around, and it's insane and ridiculous. And I was like, that is Peter Jackson. Also, most of the type of angles he uses in this one. Later on, every once in a while he'll put like a crazy tilted Dutch angle or anything. Or something like that. But like more often than not, in this one, that's where you see most of that stuff play out. But of course, the art direction and everything is beautifully done. I'm not going to get into like too much detail because I got 3 movies to get through. But basically, the movie's really well crafted. The pacing's a lot better than I remember it being. There are some cheesy moments. Like some of the dialogue is kind of cheesy and it doesn't hold up as well. And there were like 1 or 2 instances, and I'm not just talking like Middle Earth like kind of like dialogue or like fantasy style dialogue. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like just badly written. Like there's the line where she's like, after like when Frodo's been poisoned and Liv Tyler's elf, I'm so sorry, Lord of the Rings fans, is escaping, and she's like, if you want him, come and claim him. It's just like, oh, it's a bad line. But, most of the time, dialogue's still really well written. Most of the effects, I was shocked how well they hold up. They hold up so incredibly well, and I would put this movie up against modern movies. There are a few, like, there's this weird, like, again, after Frodo's been poisoned, it's like, soft focus on him like floating, and that's really bad. But like 9 times out of 10 your effects are actually really solid in this movie and going forward as well. Some minor stuff that I feel like that they learned as the movies went along. When they're in the mines and there's that big action sequence where they're fighting the troll and the orcs and stuff, it's got more shaky cam than some of the other battle scenes, and for me it was a little like, oh, this is kind of hard, honestly kind of hard to follow, which I know is like a ridiculous, like something, someone in their 60s be like, I don't understand this whole, what are they doing? But like honestly, there were a few shots I was like, I don't know, who are we following? This is like shaky cam. But there's, the rest of the series, there's no other fight scenes like that. So maybe it was intentional to kind of like make it feel more chaotic. I have no idea. But the only other thing that I could think of that I wrote down that I was like, man, this is, like from a first-time viewer, or not a first-time view, but like a recent view, when they go to the, and I know there's going to be a lot of you out there watching this video like screaming like, that's clearly so-and-so, how could you not know that? But like, again, you're talking to a guy that like, I read the book once a long time ago and don't really rewatch the movies or look into the lore. So the one scene that I was like, what is going on here, is when they go to the other like group of elves, and there's that one elf, and I guess she can like speak to people telepathically, and then like I'm like, is she good or is she bad? And then she has that big moment, she's like, you will have a queen, evil queen, and like she turns like blue, and then she's like, I passed the test. And I was like, what is going on? Like, what was this, a test I was supposed to know about? What is happening here? Now, I read up on it later, and I was like, oh, okay, the test was just, she was seeing if, like, she could not take the ring. But, like, it was really unclear, and I was like, what is... And because, like, they paint her in this, like, air of, like, is she good, is she bad? We don't know. I'm like, is something supposed to be happening? Is she possessed? What in the world is happening? Like, I don't understand this. So that was a little unclear to me on this viewing. But, like I said, I'm sure there's a lot of you out there like, that's, Lady Whatchahoozin of the Elf Realm, and she just, I don't know. I'm just like, this is a new character we're introducing, like, more than halfway into the movie, and I don't know what her deal is. I learned more about that when I recently watched the Hobbit movies for the first time, which is a whole nother video, but more on that at another time. There's some other quick little things I can mention that I like about the movie. The wizard fight between Saruman and Gandalf is very, very Peter Jackson, especially when like Gandalf's like spinning on his head and stuff. The scene with the Balrog and everything is still amazing and awesome. The movie actually has a better conclusion than I remember it having. You know, obviously the first time you see it, I knew there were 3 movies, so it wasn't like I was shocked. But like the movie just kind of felt like it ended the first. I was like, but like I actually think as like a standalone, if you were just to watch this, it actually wraps up fairly well. We know that there's going to be a continuation. It's well done overall. Fellowship, really a lot better than I remember it, and a really, really great, fun movie. So, moving on. Now, here's the biggest difference between me now and young me. Young me, like I said, Fellowship was always the weakest one to me. Watching them now, I actually think Two Towers is the weakest film. And I'll tell you why. The battle at Helm's Deep at the end of Two Towers, still amazing. Still a great, epic, amazingly choreographed, beautifully shot, technically marveling movie. Super, super, super cool. However, there's a lot that happens before that almost feels pointless. Like there's a lot of character. First of all, they introduce so many new characters at the beginning, and like from what I understand, like the extended cut adds a little bit, but like not enough to be like, now I totally understand these characters. It's still just like, here's a new character, and here's a new character, and here's a new character, and I'm like, weren't we just you just spent a whole movie introducing a bunch of people. Now we got to introduce a whole bunch of other people, and some people that don't even add anything to the lore. Like, again, I'm sure the book is way more detailed, but like the pseudo love triangle they tried doing with I don't even remember her name, like the girl with the blonde hair, I believe. The one that they're like, you know, maybe Aragorn will fall in love with her because she's human or whatever. Or like she falls in love with him, and there's just like, but he's in love with Liv Tyler's elf, and like, oh, I'm like, I don't buy this. I don't believe you will. I do not believe you will ever get together. I don't care. Like, this is really pointless. And now, to be fair, like, I'm sure she has more to do in the books, and I'm sure there's more detail about what's going on in the books, and even the extended cut, from what I do remember of Two Towers, because it's the one extended cut I've seen half of at least, and looking up the scenes, even the added scenes don't add a whole lot for me to be like, maybe this will happen, maybe they'll fall in love, and what's going to happen with... No, I never buy it. I'm like, I don't know, who are you? I don't care. Like, why? Why are you in this movie? What do you add? I'm following Frodo and Sam, and I'm following the Legolas and Gimli and Aragorn, and then like Gandalf and all that. But like, I don't. You keep throwing. There's like new king, and like then like the king. And I know like all this does come into like factor, of course, in Helm's Deep. But like up at the front, like it is kind of a little. I'm gonna be honest, a little convoluted, little bit going on where you're like, I don't know who, why is this person in here? Now, to be fair, the one girl that sadly I can't remember her name, she does kind of come into play later and have a really awesome moment in Return of the King where she kills the is the Witch King, I think is the name of him. Like the guy comes in on the dragon and stuff. So that's a cool moment. And like I'm sure she has a bigger role to play in the books. And I'm not saying she's a bad character. I just don't think the love triangle added anything for a movie where I'm like, well, aren't we following hobbits? Like we're trying to stop a bad guy. Why is it suddenly like? And then apparently Aragorn's like 80 years old. And I looked at, this is a total side note, but like I looked that up in the extended cut. There's a scene where he's like, I'm 84. And I'm like, what? What is going... What? Why? How is he 84? And I get, like, the elves are, like, immortal, and, like, the dwarves live a long time. Gandalf's supposed to be, like, 1,000 years old. But, like, why is Aragorn 84? I don't understand. Two Towers. There's a lot going on, and I don't... It's fine. It's enjoyable. It's not like I was confused. Not like I was watching it lost. I was just like, there's a lot you're throwing at me, and ultimately a lot of it doesn't stick. It doesn't need to be in the movie. And, like, you know, apparently there's more backstory with, Sean Bean and his brother. Sorry, everybody, forgetting names again, but like it's also been a few weeks. What is his name? Sean Bean and Sean Bean's brother. We're just gonna go with that. You know, apparently there's more with their character, and people weren't happy with the brother's portrayal in the movie and stuff. And I'm like, he's fine. He's a fine character. Like I get it. I understand everything. Like. So on that front, like that all worked. Ultimately, Two Towers, not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. Still really great, still beautiful. Like I said, the battle at Helm's Deep makes it all worthwhile. But like it doesn't. There was just a lot of catching up in this one for a movie that follows a movie where it was a lot of catching up, a lot of exposition, a lot of like setting up everything, suddenly then you're introduced to a whole new set of everything, and it's kind of like, whoa, and it's just not as explained as well as Fellowship is. But it's not a bad movie. No, it's still really enjoyable. I still love the banter between Legolas and Gimli. I still really love the battle at Helm's Deep. There's a lot to love about the movie. Just on rewatch, I was shocked that it was not as that the ranking has changed ever so slightly. But still really solid. Return of the King. All right, we're here. We're at the end. We're at the end of the trilogy. Return of the King is still a really solid movie. It was a solid movie when I saw it then. It's a solid movie now. There's a lot that they had to cram into one movie, and I understand that. And for some people, the extended version is better in those regards. And you get some extra stuff that a lot of people really wanted. But for me, as the theatrical cut, Return of the King works really, really great. And in fact, looking at some of the changes they made for the extended cut, I actually prefer what they did with the theatrical. Now, this is where I miss scenes. Because I actually went back and watched these scenes, and I was like, those are cool scenes. I would have liked to see those. One is the death of Saruman. Everyone talks about, that's the one thing that really should have been included is, he kind of just, in Two Towers, he kind of just, leaves, and then you just kind of assume that, the Treebeard and all of them, they got him, and it's fine. But there's an extended scene, and apparently it's way different in the book. I was reading up on that, and it happens after the rest of the events and everything, and it's all right, so Peter Jackson condensed it in this one scene. He couldn't figure out where to place it, and so it was just ultimately cut. And that is a bummer, because it does kind of leave one character hanging a little bit, but it's not important to the main story. And I know it is an important factor. Saruman's the second bad guy in the series. But, ultimately, it's about destroying the One Ring so Sauron doesn't come back to power. So because of that, it's okay. Now, that scene I miss. The other scene I miss, actually, I don't think adds anything to the movie. I just think it's a cool scene, and it's the mouth of Sauron, who is this, weird, I guess he was supposed to be human, but he's, got these, giant teeth, and he, makes these weird noises, and he's, he says, the hobbits are dead, and he's, drooling, slime and stuff, and it's okay, cool. I like this scene. It's very, very Peter Jackson. That's kind of why I like it. It's reminiscent of his early stuff. Then Aragorn comes over and cuts off his head. Problem is, apparently where that falls in the book, makes sense because you're unclear Frodo and Sam are alive at that point, and so you're maybe they are dead. But in the movie, it's yeah, but we know they're alive, so the scene didn't really add anything, so that's why it was cut. So, two scenes. One I think should have been in the film. One I'm I just like the scene. But ultimately, Return of the King I actually think is a really solid, fast-paced, great movie. Of course, here it comes. We gotta talk about it. There are way too many endings. I mean, when I was watching it this time, everybody knew. Everybody was man, these endings, they keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going in the theater. And, at home, you expect that. All right, here come the endings. And I figured out what the problem is. It's really simple, and there's a way Peter Jackson could have fixed it, and I don't know why he didn't. It's the fade-outs and fade-ins. That's all. If he had taken those out and either changed them with different transitions or, put in even crust dissolves or just cuts, anything, instead we fade in, we fade out, we fade in. I think it happens 5 times, something like that. It's an insane amount of times. For a movie that ultimately, I guess the books have an epilogue, a massive epilogue, and there's a lot more that happens at the Shire and everything. But for the movies, you defeated Sauron, the ring is destroyed. There's really not a whole lot left to tell in that regard. And so, yes, you do want to wrap up everybody's loose ends. I understand that. But, there's just a better way to edit it, and that was never fixed for the extended cut either. So apparently that's the way Peter Jackson wanted it to be. The endings aside, the rest of the movie is really good. Really solid, really fun, really great pacing. The action scenes are beautiful. It builds to a really emotional ending, of course. And I didn't even touch on a lot of stuff. I didn't touch on Andy Serkis' performance as Gollum. I didn't touch on a lot of stuff. This is just kind of bare bones of what I think of Lord of the Rings revisiting it. A few minor notes though, Pippin's the worst. It's Pippin, right? Yeah, Pippin. Because he's the one that every time there's a problem, it's Pippin's fault. And it's God, learn. Just learn. Pippin? Like, just, yeah. Also, apparently in the extended cut, the ghosts that they go to, like, recruit, like, tell them they're gonna fight, and then when that scene happens, like, you already know, so, like, it spoils the like, will they, won't they show up to help our heroes moment that's in the theatrical, so why'd they add that in the extended? Anyway, besides the point. Looking at these movies, sitting back and watching them, I can finally say, I get it. I get why people like Lord of the Rings. It's fun. They're a great film series. And I'm like, I have nothing against, it was nothing against, like, the movies or the books or, like, fantasy in general. I like a lot of fantasy stuff. Like, but, like, something about Lord of the Rings just never connected with me in that same way. I always thought they were enjoyable films, but ones I rarely went back to visit. Now revisiting them at my current age, being almost 30 and I'm watching them now, I get it. I get why people love them so dearly, and I probably will revisit them more often now because they're just an incredibly well-told story that feel more like Peter Jackson movies than I remember them feeling like. That was a big thing too, is they felt so different from his early movies, and I'm a big fan of his early movies, that I was just like, Lord of the Rings is great. But, like, revisiting them now, they feel like a good extension of him as a filmmaker. So, basically, to wrap this all up, Lord of the Rings. It's cool. I like it. It's enjoyable. I'm glad I revisited them. But if you want more videos like this, definitely check out the rest of my channel. I have impromptu reviews, which are kind of like this off the top of my head, movie reviews. Typically, they're shorter than this or about one movie in particular. But you can check those out. You can also check out Fright Films, which is my horror movie review show. In fact, check out the episode I did way long ago on The Frighteners. It's a Peter Jackson movie as well, one of kind of like his in-between movie, between his early B movies and making Lord of the Rings. So check out that review. You can also check out some of my food reviews, all kinds of stuff on the channel. So as all the YouTubers say, please like this video, please ring that bell to get notified, and please subscribe if you can. And until then, I'll see you next time.